been way too long since we did some baking.
We want to share with you some of the tastes of our childhood. These were the dishes that were served to us by our mums and our grandmas.
We know our favourites, but we would love to know yours.
So we're going to bake all of our favourite puddings. And at the end of the series, you can vote for your favourite.
This year, why don't you join me for the Bryonybear's Pudding Club? So come on, let's get baking!
Ladies and gentlemen, there is only one way we could finish this first series of the Pudding Club. I'm delighted and rather excited to introduce you to Christmas pudding. Growing up, Dan's mum would make this every year, and everyone in the house had to take a turn stirring. Tradition said that you should stir from east to west to remember the wise men who visited Jesus in the Nativity story. But how did this rich and deliciously decadent pudding come to grace the Christmas dinner table? It all starts in the 15th century with this and the Tudor kitchen. This is pottage. It's a kind of thick soup which included dried fruit, spices and wine. It was thickened with breadcrumbs or ground almonds, and it actually tasted quite similar to mince pies. If you had lived in Tudor England, you would have known this as plum pottage or figgy pudding, and you would have actually started your meal with this. It was never eaten at the end. For the next 200 years, the recipe was a winter staple and eaten often throughout that season. By the end of the 17th century, the recipe had evolved and plum pudding began to take on more of a solid appearance. It was often cooked in a skin like a sausage, and it began to be served sliced alongside your main meal. It was actually Queen Victoria who began the tradition of Christmas pudding. She and her husband, Prince Albert, believed Christmas should be celebrated, and it was they who began the tradition of Christmas trees and Christmas pudding. The tried, tested and adored plum pudding recipe was tweaked by Victorian chefs to create the Christmas pudding that we serve today. Originally, puddings were shaped into a sphere and boiled in a cloth, but that practice eventually gave way to what we will do today. Enough talk, let's head over to the kitchen and find out how we make it.
Okay, so what baking notions will we need for our Christmas pudding? Fairly basic things really, apart from the most important thing is the pudding basin itself. Now this should be about 1.2 litres in volume. You can see the kind of size of this one, sort of comparative to my hand. I just got this one in a local sort of homeware shop. It's by Tala. And I liked this one because it was red. And I wanted something sort of festive. They did them in all different colours, but I went for red to add a bit of festive cheer to the procedure. So pudding basin, and it's ceramic, which I think is the traditional thing to use. You can just use a Pyrex bowl if you want to, that would be perfectly fine. Just make sure that it does fit into your steamer. So the next thing I will mention is the steamer. This is the same one that I used for the syrup sponge pudding, and this does just fit in, luckily. You just want to make sure that when you pop your bowl in, your pudding bowl, that the lid goes on, and that's totally fine. We're just going to need a really large, roomy mixing bowl. But it's nice and big, and a wooden spoon for stirring. I actually treated myself to a new wooden spoon. Do you like it? It's made with olive wood and it's hand carved. It's really, really beautiful, I think. And it does smell of olive oil. It's really lovely. So I think it's quite nice to have little special things when you're making something like this, because it is an occasion thing and everybody can get in and have a stir. We're just going to need some weighing scales, just normal kitchen weighing scales, measuring jug, and then you're going to need a couple of pieces of baking parchment and some foil that's approximately 2 inches wider all the way round than the lip of your pudding basin. So all I did was I put the pudding basin face down onto it, and then I just drew roughly around sort of with a 2-inch gap and cut out 2 pieces of baking parchment and a piece of foil, and then just a length of string. Or if you're a knitter, as we all are, I'm just using some cotton yarn, which is perfectly fine. I didn't have any string, so cotton yarn works perfectly well. So let's look at our ingredients now. Yes, there are quite a lot, so you're probably at this point feeling very intimidated by the thought of this. There are a lot of ingredients, but there is nothing difficult about this whatsoever. So I will just go through everything that we're going to need. I'll start over on the left with the alcohol element of it. Now this can vary slightly from recipe to recipe, and really you can adapt this to whatever you have in or whatever your preferences are. So we're going to need either some rum, or in my case I've got brandy. If you're going to use rum, make sure it's the dark coloured rum. You don't want Bacardi. You want a dark rum or brandy. We're going to need something called barley wine. Now, I'd never used this before, and I thought, gosh, am I going to be able to find that? But we actually found this in the local supermarket. It was in Morrison's, if you're in this country. But if you can't find barley wine, then you can actually just make up the volume of it with the third alcohol, which is some stout. We're using Samuel Smith's Imperial Stout, but any stout is absolutely fine. So if you can't find the barley wine, then just add extra stout to make up the kind of volume amount that you need in total. We're going to need some self-raising flour. Not very much actually, you'll probably be surprised at how little we put in. We're then going to need 3 types of dried fruit. These are the very traditional 3 sort of fruits that we generally use in Christmas cakes and Christmas puddings. So we're going to need sultanas, we're going to need raisins, we're going to need currants. And I just buy these from a supermarket. I think, you can buy them from sort of specialist health food shops, but I always feel that the turnover is much higher in a supermarket, so they're more likely to be as fresh as possible. We're then going to need some almonds, and whole almonds are absolutely fine with the skin on. Some suet. This is beef suet, and this is what you would traditionally use in a Christmas pudding. Of course, if you prefer to use vegetable suet, you can get the equivalent in a vegetable suet. But if you're a meat eater, really I would go for beef suet. It is better in my opinion. The sugar is dark brown soft sugar. So in my case it's a dark muscovado. It's the sugar that's when you push it like this, it's very soft. So dark brown, it needs to be the dark colour. We're then going to need just 1 orange. This is a navel orange, just a nice large orange. A lemon, and this is an unwaxed lemon. We always buy lemons unwaxed. To me, it's completely unnecessary to wax a lemon. And then just 1 small cooking apple. This is a Bramley. Some breadcrumbs, and these should be fresh breadcrumbs, not the dried ones that you can buy in supermarkets. In my opinion, they're fairly nasty, the dried breadcrumbs. You want fresh ones, which are really easy to make. This is crust on. I just use white bread, crusts on. That's completely fine. 2 eggs. And then this is cut mixed peel, which is basically, it's orange peel and lemon peel, and sometimes there's lime in there as well. And it's basically been dried out, if you like, with sugar on the top. It's like a preserved orange and lemon peel. I usually prefer to buy this uncut, but they didn't have it uncut in the supermarket this time, so I had to get already cut. And then some spices. And again, this is where you can vary it a little bit depending on your taste, but we're going to need some cinnamon, some mixed spice, and then finally some nutmeg. And this is whole nutmeg. You can see it's the whole ones. Don't ever buy pre-ground nutmeg. It doesn't
have any, you know, compared to the flavour you get from whole nutmeg. If you buy it already ground, it really loses a lot of its flavour. So definitely get whole nutmeg and just grate it yourself. So there we go. That's all. I say that's all. It's quite a lot of ingredients. I know there's quite a lot of ingredients, but you really don't have to do very much with them. So it's really worth giving it a go. So now we're going to start adding all of our ingredients. Basically all we need to do is you are putting pretty much all of the ingredients, not quite all of them, but pretty much all of the ingredients go into your mixing bowl one by one, and then we're just going to stir them all together. That's the initial stage of the Christmas pudding. So first thing to go in is the suet. And I just put the bowl onto my scales and do it that way. I find that's the easiest way. So it's a bit too much. I do like to be precise with my measurements. There we go, 110. Baking is a science at the end of the day, and we really do need to be as precise as we can. And the next thing to go in is the breadcrumbs. I've already zazzed these in the little blitzy thing, so I know that the quantity is right. So breadcrumbs go in. Oh, it smells lovely. Can you smell it? So we need a teaspoon of the mixed spice. If you like if you like your puddings, if you like them very spicy, then by all means add more. But I'm going with the recipe. So teaspoon of mixed spice, cinnamon next. And you basically want a good pinch. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of cinnamon, but when it's within the pudding, you don't specifically taste that one spice. So it's just a good pinch. So I literally just grab a pinch and pop that in. And then the next thing is the nutmeg. And you want about 1/4 teaspoon. Now I just sort of do this by eye, if I'm honest. And I just grate it in until I think I've put enough in, because I really love nutmeg, so I'm never afraid I'm going to put too much in. But if you want to sort of grate it onto a little dish first and then scoop it and make sure you've got the right amount, then by all means do that. So about 1/4 teaspoon of grated nutmeg. Oh, it smells fantastic, nutmeg. I love it. So that's all our spices. And now it's time for the sugar. We're going to need 225 grams. So you can see now the darkness of this. And it smells wonderful. It smells like molasses. So just if you squidge it like that, it comes out easily. And just watch your scales. That's actually 3 grams over. I'm going to be precise and take that out. There we go. And now it's time for the dried fruit. So first to go in are sultanas. I want 110 grams. Next is raisins. Same amount, 110 grams. Okay. And then lastly, the currants. We're going to need more of these. It's 275 grams of currants. Currants are the really tiny ones. I love currants. We use these a lot for fat rascals. Okay, 275. And it's just 25 grams of mixed peel. There we go. And now it's the almonds. These need to be chopped, so what I'm going to do is I will just weigh them and then I will just roughly chop them. And I'm just going to roughly chop. They will have a tendency to kind of fly everywhere. You don't want nut dust. That sounds weird. Nut dust. You don't want kind of teeny tiny nibbed nuts, that kind of thing. I like to have a bit of crunch with it. It's nice if you do come across a little bit of almond, I think, in your pudding. I think doing all these things, it's quite nice sometimes to have to do something that takes a bit of time. You have to take care that
you get all your ingredients in, you have to take the time, as you'll see when we've got everything in, to stir it really well. And I think it's a really good thing to do, just to give yourself something to do that you know that you can't rush. So, and it just slows you down, doesn't it? Which I think is a good thing. I think it's nice to slow down. I love almonds. I think my favourite nut actually is pecans. And then next would be almonds, I think. Okay, so now I'm just chopping up the apple. You don't need to peel it, but obviously just take the core out. And you just want to chop it into quite fine little bits. And again, this could be done in the food processor if you wanted to, but I just prefer that handmade touch to it, if you like. Okay, so the apple is in, and we're now going to deal with the orange and the lemon, and all we need from these is the zest. So by that I mean it's just the very outer bit of the skin. You don't want the white pithy bit underneath. So I'm just, see now, I've got the zest off there. We don't want that paler bit there. So all I do is just go all the way around the orange. I think the recipe actually calls for half an orange and half a lemon zest, but I kind of like the orange and lemon zest, so I pretty much do all of the orange and lemon. You can just do half if you prefer. One great thing about making Christmas pudding is the smells that you're going to get, because your kitchen is going to smell fantastic for 2 days, because this is a 2-day process, but we're not really doing anything in those 2 days. You know, largely we're not doing anything. And then onto the lemon. Exactly the same thing. There we go. That's all the lemon. Now, go inside of your grater, because there'll be tons of zest in there. It all sticks to the inside, so make sure you scrape it out. What we're now going to do is measure out all the wet ingredients. So first of all, we've got, in our case, 2 tablespoons of brandy. And now we've got the barley wine. So first of all, let's measure out the 75 mils. Oh, it's like I'm in a pub. There we go, 75 mils. Pop that in there. It looks like it is basically a strong beer. It is like an amber colour. So should we give it a go? It smells like beer. I'm not a massive beer fan. It smells like beer. It's alright. It's like a nice beer. That's okay. I quite like that. So now it's time for the stout. Now this should be a very dark colour. And again, 75 mils of the stout. Oh my goodness, it's like liquid chocolate. 75 mils. And that goes in there. It's a much darker colour, it's like treacle. Not so keen on the stout. I think it was like a chocolatey taste it was meant to have. I can kind of get that. It's got that kind of bitter. I'm not so bothered about that one, I'll be honest. And we now need to add in the 2 eggs. Oh, it looks a delicious mix, this, doesn't it? It's like a beer stew. So pop our 2 eggs in. And now it looks like some Chinese soup, doesn't it? And just get a fork. We just want to really get those eggs mixed in. So you can see it's a fair amount of liquid, and it should make a nice kind of dropping consistency when everything's mixed. We're going to add that to our dry ingredients, so just pour it all over. It does look like I'm pouring cold coffee on it, I've got to say. And now all we've got to do is get in with your wooden spoon and stir. Now this is the point where I think traditionally people would get in all of their families and they would all have a stir of the Christmas pudding. I think it had a particular name, Stir Up Sunday, so let's pretend that this is now Stir Up Sunday.
You're doing it wrong.
I'm doing it wrong?
Yeah.
How am I doing it wrong?
You're supposed to stir from east to west.
East to west?
Yes. So start in the east and
like
stir
that?
to the west. Well, so long as you... Now you've just gone from west to east.
Did I? Is that not east?
You'll have to start again.
Is that east?
That's west.
That's east.
That's east.
So
east
that's what I did. I did that.
Yeah,
east to west.
But then look, now you're coming back west to east.
You can't stir just like that. It's impossible.
Look, I didn't make the rules.
Right, okay, I'm just going to stir it. So you need to just really stir this and stir it and stir it and stir it until you think it's as amalgamated as it can possibly be. It's a really important part of it because what we're doing is we are combining all of those lovely spices, all of the liquids, so everything is getting a really good coating of the liquid and of the spices. So you can see I've been stirring for a little while now, and it does kind of get looser as you stir because you are getting all of the liquids in there. And the consistency you want to be able to hold some on your spoon, and if you do this, it will just drop off like that. That's how it wants to be. If you find that you do that and turn your spoon and it kind of stays on the spoon in a lump, just add a bit more of your stout or your beer. I would say stir it for a good 10 minutes. And if your children are around, get them to come in and have a good stir. Everyone who's in the house should come and have a stir, east to west, and make a wish. So now that the pudding has had a really good stir, I'm just going to cover that over with a tea towel. Leave it, on the side in your kitchen, not anywhere really hot, but this time of year it shouldn't be really hot in your kitchen. Just leave it, and then we will come back to it tomorrow to finish it off. Welcome back, everyone. Now 12 hours at least has passed. It's the next day for us, and the Christmas pudding has had its maturing time, if you like. So here's our mixture now, and I hope you can see the difference. It really is much thicker. It's, it doesn't drop off the spoon as freely as it did, and all of that liquid has been absorbed into the fruits, and it kind of sounds different. Can you hear that? I think it's a fantastic sound. Listen. Oh, it sounds just unctuous. Right, so all that's left to do is to add in the flour. It's just 50 grams of self-raising flour. That's all it is. Because this is not, it's not a sponge, We're not aiming for that spongy texture. It's rich and, just fantastic. So just 50 grams of self-raising flour, and give that a good stir. Make sure that it's all incorporated. Let me tell you, it'll be no hardship at all stirring this because it just smells so unbelievably amazing. And you can see that flour has really sort of thickened up the mixture now. So I just want to make sure that I've really mixed it well. So all we need to do now is pack that into your pudding basin. I've lightly greased it just with some butter all the way inside. And we're just now going to plop that in. Oh, it's fantastic. I'm just imagining eating this now on Christmas Day. And just kind of pack it down. You don't want any air bubbles in there. If it comes more or less to the top, if yours is, oops, lost a bit. If yours is slightly smaller than this, don't worry, because it won't rise up very much at all. It's not that kind of a pudding really that it will rise a lot. Okay, so that's it in our pudding basin. Just going to give it a little squidge down just to make sure it's nice and tightly packed in there. And now we just need to put on our coverings. So we've got, first of all, we've got 2 pieces of baking parchment. So these are going to go on top, but before we do that, we're going to just make a little pleat. And I will actually do this all together, but I'll just show you what we've got. We've got 2 pieces of baking parchment. That's really just to protect it because it's such a long cooking time, and I'll tell you about that in a second. We really just want to protect it as much as possible from sort of direct heat because it's a very mellow, gentle steam that this has. And then a piece of foil on top. So what I'm going to do before I sort of tie that down is just make a little pleat. And that will just allow for any expansion of the pudding inside. And then we are going to just push that down over the edges. And the foil will really help in keeping the baking parchment under control when you're doing this. And the idea of the pudding basin having a lip, if you see it had this lip here, the purpose of that, personally I think the purpose of that is so that you can tie your string around it and it gives it something to grip against. So we've got that all pushed down. And now we need to just tie our string, or in this case, cotton yarn, around it. Now this is where you might need another person to help you, just to sort of hold it down while you tie. So there's the lip. Okay, so we did it. You will need another person just to help you just hold that string in place just while you tie it. All done, and it's ready to pop into the steamer. Now it does have a long steam. Don't panic when I tell you this, but it needs 8 hours steaming. You're not doing anything in that 8 hours. All you need to do is probably every couple of hours just come and check the water level in the steamer and make sure that it hasn't dropped down. If you need to, just add a bit more. When you add water into it, make sure it's boiling from the kettle so that you don't lose that steam. And then at the end of that 8 hours, take it out and let it go completely cold. So just leave it on the side in the kitchen, let it go completely cold. And then all you need to do then is take off the wrappings that you've had on the top, put fresh ones on exactly the same way that you did previously, and then it's all ready for steaming on Christmas Day. And it just needs a couple of hours steaming on Christmas Day, so you can just have it on the back of your stove just steaming away whilst you're sort of cooking everything else. So obviously we can't try this one because this one has to mature. This is why we've made it now at the end of September. Ideal time to make it. It gives it a couple of months, October, November, 3 months it gives it to mature and really develop all those flavours. So what we've done is we have purchased our favourite Christmas pudding from last year's taste test that we did as part of our advent calendar, and we're going to try that one together. So here we are. This is obviously not the one that is behind me steaming away. This is a shop bought one, as I said before. Even though this is very good, we know this is a good one, we've had it before, it really is nothing compared to a homemade one. So as I said before, once it's all gone cold, you've steamed it for your 8 hours, you've taken it off, you've let it go cold, put on fresh wrappings, and then pop it away somewhere cool and dark. If you've got a pantry, that's perfect. If you've got a spare bedroom you don't use, put it under the bed. Anywhere that's cool and dark, and then take it out Christmas Day, 2 hours steaming, and Bob's your uncle. So let's try it. So we're just having it here with cream, which tends to be how we have it, but some people have brandy butter, brandy sauce, custard some people, but we just like double cream. So here we go. Oh, it's good. This is a really nice one. This is from Sainsbury's. It is really nice. And the ones that we tend to like the most are the ones that don't have that massive hit of alcohol when you taste them. It shouldn't be like that. The alcohol is there to give flavour to the whole thing, not to give you a wallop of kind of alcohol as soon as you eat it. So this one's really good because you don't get that, you just get all the flavours associated with it. So there we go everyone, that is the end of this season's pudding club, but do not fear, we will be back. We'll have a new series, whole new recipes starting in March next year. We will open the voting for this year's favourite pudding, so you can vote for which one you've enjoyed the most. Maybe you've made them all. Is there anyone out there that's made them all? That would be fantastic to know if there was anyone. So you can really judge it. But even if you haven't made them all, just vote for whichever one you enjoyed watching the most, whichever one you thought looked the most delicious. So we will see you back in March. Enjoy your Christmas puddings when it gets to Christmas Day. I really, really hope that some people make their own and that you really enjoy them. So we will see you back soon. Okay, now, is it on me that? Or?
Yeah, just for a minute.
Oh right, okay. Same amount, 110 grams. Whoops, I didn't zeroise. I think about 5 grams went in there, so fine. And I'm going to taste this. I'm going to do a little taste test for you. What, is that not how I do it?
Put it flat on the top, no.
Oh, okay, oh gosh, I don't know how to do these things. So all we need to do now...
Mega.
It does... Mega? Who are we, the hairy bikers?
You started it by saying unctuous.
Oh, dearie me. Right.